The lighthouse. On the jagged, salt-sprayed cliffs near Portland, the Silverhook Lighthouse had watched over the Atlantic for over 100 years. But the world had grown loud and fast, and the old tower was scheduled for demolition at dawn. Thomas, a volunteer who had polished its brass since he was a young man, stood at the base of the white stone tower. He held a notice of demolition in his trembling hand, looking up at the lantern room one last time. Thomas turned his heavy iron key in the lock. The door groaned open, releasing the scent of old oil, cold stone, and a century of memories. He didn't come to protest or to shout at the wind. He came to perform one final duty. He stepped inside, his boots echoing against the circular walls as he prepared for the long climb. There were 142 steps to the top. Thomas climbed them slowly, his hand gripping the iron railing that felt like an old friend's shoulder. With every floor he passed, he remembered the storms he had weathered within these walls. His legs were tired, and his breath came in short gasps, but he would not stop until he reached the glass. At the very top, the great Fresnel lens sat like a giant, silent diamond. It was dusty now, neglected by a world that relied on satellites and screens. Thomas pulled a soft chamois cloth from his pocket. He began to polish the glass, working in steady, rhythmic circles until the lens began to shimmer in the fading afternoon light. As the sun dipped below the horizon, staining the sky in deep shades of violet and bruised gold, Thomas prepared the lamp. The Silverhook deserved a proper goodbye. It shouldn't have to face its final night in the dark. He checked the oil and trimmed the wick with the same precision he had used for 40 years. With a steady hand, Thomas struck a match. The flame caught, small and flickering at first, then growing into a roar of golden light. He engaged the heavy iron gears, and with a familiar groan, the great lens began to rotate. A brilliant beam of light sliced through the gathering gloom, reaching out toward the dark, hungry sea. He sat in his old wooden chair and watched the beam sweep across the waves. He remembered the night of the Great Nor'easter, when he had stayed awake for 30 hours to ensure the light never wavered. He thought of the thousands of sailors who had seen this very flash and knew they were finally home. The night passed in a peaceful hum. Thomas wasn't lonely. He felt the presence of every keeper who had come before him. He watched the constellations shift across the sky, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The lighthouse had done its job well, and so had he. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the rhythmic thrum-thrum of the rotating gears. At the first hint of gray dawn, the light flickered and died as the oil ran dry. Below, the heavy rumble of engines signaled the arrival of the demolition crew. Elias, the foreman of the team, climbed the stairs to find the old volunteer. He reached the lantern room and paused at the threshold, his hard hat in his hand. Thomas sat by the window, bathed in the soft, rosy light of the rising sun. His chores were finished, and his heart was light. The Silverhook stood silent and proud one last time before the end. As the sun climbed over the horizon, the light of the world took over where the lighthouse had left off.